Barack Obama.
Dan's sounding good.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Good. We wanted to
Thank
make
you, gentlemen.
Home.
Thank you so much. I feel good. How come you're so much higher than me? Is this
Well,
kind of a power play?
Yeah, it does seem.
Yeah.
It does seem particularly ridiculous right now.
Yeah, but that's okay. I'm glad you feel good about yourself.
Listen, if they legalize marijuana in Washington, D.C., you can be higher than me. How are you? Thank you for coming.
I feel good. Thank you.
You did a great job with mean tweets, by the way.
You know, I have to say, though, those weren't that mean. I mean, look, I've got to tell you, you should see what the Senate says about that all the time. And that was some piker stuff.
Do you ever physically tweet yourself, or does somebody do that for you?
I do not physically tweet in general. There are times where I'm responding to like a particular issue. We're trying to get something out, and you know, I'll get on there so that I'm interacting with young people or something like that on a special event. Generally speaking, I got some other stuff to do.
Do you text?
I don't text. I email. I still have a BlackBerry because I can't.
One guy has a BlackBerry.
The one old guy there. Look at that. He's my age. He's my age. Somebody my generation. You know, I can't use phones with recorders in them. So a lot of the newfangled stuff, for security reasons, I don't get.
Do you have Hillary Clinton's new email address?
I can't share it with you. I don't think she'd want you to have it, frankly.
She specifically mentioned that. She did not want me to have it.
You know what? You're going on Kimmel. If he asked for the email address, no way.
You have young kids, and of course every parent has to talk to their kids about going on social media, but you especially must have to say to your daughters, don't do anything, don't post anything, don't ever do anything.
Don't do that. I mean, look, they all have their smartphones, and they're texting with their friends. They're doing all the stuff that the teenagers are doing.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Michelle and I try to emphasize to them that they don't want to be on TMZ.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would imagine so. Yes. By the way, speaking of the news, I want to mention something. Last night, very late last night for you in Washington, D.C., in Ferguson, 2 police officers were shot, and thank goodness
thankfully they're okay.
They're at home now, and they're out of the hospital. And especially, you gave a beautiful speech in Selma last Saturday, talking about these very subjects, about civil rights, the past, the present, the future of civil rights. Does that make it especially painful for you when something like this happens?
Obviously, we don't yet know what happened. Our thoughts and prayers are with the officers and their families, and thankfully, as you said, they're going to be okay. What was beautiful about Selma was reminding ourselves that real social change in this country so often has happened because ordinary people are willing in a nonviolent fashion to make their voices heard. And, you know, I think that what had been happening in Ferguson was oppressive and objectionable and was worthy of protest. But there was no excuse for criminal acts. And whoever fired those shots shouldn't detract from the issue. They're criminals. They need to be arrested. And then what we need to do is to make sure that like-minded, good-spirited people on both sides, law enforcement who have a terrifically tough job, and people who understandably don't want to be stopped and harassed just because of their race, that we're able to work together to try to come up with some good answers. And I think I put together a task force after the original Ferguson event had taken place that had police officers, police chiefs, and some of the organizers of protests both in Ferguson and in New York, young people. And they came up with some terrific recommendations and found that there's a lot of common ground. And what we have to make sure of is that the folks who disregard and disrespect the other side, people who resort to violence, that they're marginalized. And
they set us all back. They do, yeah.
They do. But they're not the majority. And in the same way that you can't generalize about police officers who do an extraordinarily tough job, overwhelmingly they do it professionally, you can't generalize about protesters who, it turns out, had some very legitimate grievances. The Justice Department report showed that they were being stopped. African Americans were being stopped disproportionately, mainly so the city could raise money, even though these were unjust. And
I can't imagine how frustrating that must be. I mean, I get crazy, and I'm not joking about when I get like parking tickets that I feel are unjust, and to be put in a situation like that, I mean, I do really, like, my wheels are not turned properly, and I feel like they're just trying to make money off of me. They're not obeying the spirit of the law.
Well, and what was happening in Ferguson was you had city government telling the police department and that stop more people, we need to raise more money. Folks would get stopped, they'd get tickets, then they'd have to wait in line to pay it, take a day off work. Folks would lose their jobs. In some cases, they were thrown in jail because they didn't have enough money for the fines. And then they'd get fined for that. And, you know, so there was a whole structure there, according to the Justice Department report, that indicated both racism and just a disregard for what law enforcement is supposed to do. And as I said before, I said this at Selma, it is not unique, but it's also not the norm. And we've got to constantly, when we're thinking about issues of racial progress or any kind of issue, recognize that things get better, but there's still more work to do. And we shouldn't be complacent about the very real existence of problems out there, but we shouldn't despair and think nothing's changed. If people of goodwill, which is the overwhelming majority of Americans, are working together, these are problems we can solve.
The President of the United States is here. We'll be right back.